Hello and welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, India's only daily television platform for small businesses. Over the past 7 years, we've understood what matters most to you, the entrepreneur. And in year 8, we're taking head-on 2 of your most pressing concerns, that of funding and mentoring. I'm Sananda Jayaseelan to the influencer conversations in focus tonight. First up is TTK Prestige. On the other side of a break, the management of Indifi will be joining us. One of the oldest and definitely the largest name when it comes to the kitchen appliances market. I'm talking about TTK Prestige. I traveled to Bengaluru to catch up with T Jagannathan to understand from him how they've managed to maintain the kind of hold that they have in this market, to understand from him also retailing online versus offline, his insights when it comes to the urban and rural divide, as well as his thoughts on young entrepreneurs when it comes to branding. Take a listen. It's such a pleasure to talk to you here on the show, Mr. Jagannathan. We talk to India's most innovative companies here on the Leaders of Tomorrow, and it's exciting to talk to someone like yourself who's pioneered really anything to do today, either in the cleaning space or the kitchen space. Let's start by talking about something called the GRS, the gasket release system, which really small but completely changed the way cookers and pressure cookers were being viewed in India. And my question really is innovation really about the small details? Is it about the small things?
Well, it's about the small thing and the big picture.
Okay.
Ultimately, you have to look at the big picture to come to the detail, but it is in the detail where the devil is.
Did you, when you approached really making these changes, and what was the thinking? You did want to bring about that change as far as, making it safer, making the pressure cooker safer, turning around the sort of drop, if I can call it that, in sales. But when you were approaching it, what was the thinking behind? And I'm trying to understand if we can use this conversation to talk to our viewers about how one should innovate. Is that something that can be taught? Is that something that, you can look around you and see what is happening and then arrive at the big picture?
Pressure cookers have been around for a long time, long before we started making it.
Yeah.
It's been around since 1890 something, Dennis Pepin. So you wonder why they didn't have that safety device. So everybody in my factory said, well, if it was necessary, it would have been done. Except one big difference. In India, everything is spurious. You get spurious drugs, spurious perfumes, spurious cosmetics. So they were selling spurious safety plugs. Okay. When that happens, the pressure cooker will explode. What happens then is it gets a bad name, which it happened in America. All pressure cookers exploded, so people went away from pressure cookers. Though it's a very useful device. I was worried that would happen to India if we didn't solve it quickly. So luckily I came up with the gasket release system which solved it.
Okay, but I'm talking about the big picture on innovation and your advice for a young entrepreneur who's watching this interview to say, where is that spark going to really come from? Actually,
we look for things like pain points. Basically, we focus on the kitchen and the home and find out what is it that the housewife would like to make better because it is a painful process. For instance, rolling a chapati. That is a pain point. So we came up with something whereby you didn't have to roll a chapati. So chopping onions, for instance. It's another pain point. So we came up with something that easily chops onions. Like that, we look at basically pain points and arrive at solutions. This is how product innovation has happened for centuries around the world.
For a product and for a business that is present in so many different verticals, with so many different innovations and so many different geographies, really, how do you listen to the consumer? Because that's where really your innovation and your ideas are coming about. How do you as a company do it?
We do use two things. I travel a lot. Okay. I meet a lot of people. I go to dealers, I talk to consumers. I spend about 2 weeks a month traveling. And I also go to all the shows.
You still do that?
I still do that. Okay. Yeah, I'm 72, I still do that.
Okay.
And I also go to all the big shows in the world to see what's happening. So we're not the only innovator, there are other people too. So to learn from what they're doing. And the other way we learn is we've got our own shops. We got 550 of our own shops where we encourage the customer to give us feedback.
Okay, but how does a company like yours, which is as large as you are, then quickly course correct? A lot of people say it's much easier for a small company to course correct versus a large company. So then how do you do it seamlessly?
We are lucky in one way. I am the head of product development myself. So these things come straight to me.
Okay.
When there's a problem or there's a feedback, it comes straight to me and I sit and work on it immediately.
Okay.
It doesn't come through the grapevine, no A to B, B to C, C to D, up the ladder. It comes straight to me.
Okay. Is that necessary as the head of the company?
It is necessary in our business.
Okay. I want to talk about also the fact that your products and the brand name really is the best marketing campaign you can ever have. And the name is something that you've hard fought to sort of create that market for yourself. My first question as far as the brand image really of the brand is concerned is how do you develop that brand? How do you say that this is what I'm going to stand for? You came up with a very iconic campaign many years ago that helped sort of cement where it is you wanted to see the company going. Where did the idea for that come about? Where did the belief to say this is what we're going to stand for come?
Actually, a brand is built over a period of several steps. It's not one thing that you do. That iconic campaign came because we wanted to emphasize safety. And the best way to emphasize safety is, in those days, men made all the decisions. So we came up with the lens of BB se kare pyar, Prestige se kaise kare in car, which the man said would buy only a Prestige pressure cooker because he loved his wife because of the safety. So that was a campaign exclusive of safety. It outgrew itself and became a iconic line by itself, and so we still use it. And there are a series of things that you do. It's not one thing that you build a brand. A brand building is a complex exercise where there's quality, there's service, there's dealer relationship, there's innovation, there's consistency, there's a lot of things you have to do, apart from a marketing campaign. I'm reminded of a magazine called New Delhi, which was launched about 25, 30 years ago. The campaign was so powerful that everybody went and bought a magazine. The magazine didn't live up to it. It died in 3 months.
Okay.
So the marketing campaigns alone don't build brands.
Okay, fair enough. Let's talk very briefly about some of the product innovations that you've introduced. You've started, of course, you have the iconic pressure cooker range, but now you've moved into, say, stovetops, etc. Anything that you can give us on that in terms of, what verticals are exciting you, what perhaps some of the trends are in 2019?
What the market has changed considerably from when we started making pressure cookers to now. In those days, the kitchen was somewhere in the back, and nearly everybody had a cook. So what the product looked like, as long as the product worked, it was fine. Now the kitchen has moved into the center of the house, and the cooks are vanishing. It's the couple that does the cooking now, and I'm glad to say it's the couple, not the wife. Both of them do the cooking today. And so what's happened is the kitchen has become a focus of attention. So it's not only how things work, it's how things look. So there's a lot of attention being spent on aesthetics, apart from, of course, innovation and making things work better.
Okay, you were saying that the market has changed considerably since the time that you've entered this business really, and I want to go back to that and talk about how you handle competition. This is a very competitive market, you said that yourself. You're a brand that's known to be a premium brand, slightly at the higher end. How are you competing with others who are cheaper than you, who are perhaps, introducing other variants, other varieties? How do you handle that?
Well, it's very simple. Quality, innovation, aesthetics are very important, apart from, of course, a campaign. And as long as the customer believes that the price he's paying for your product is worth it, he'll pay. Okay. Or she'll pay.
Sure.
Let's get that correct.
Sure. Pricing is particularly crucial, I would imagine, outside of the metros, in the tier 3, tier 4 of India, in the Bharat really of India. How do you tackle that? Because you've continued to hold your market share, but then how do you consolidate?
We have discovered, to our surprise, the pricing is not as relevant in the rural areas as it is in the city. They're prepared to pay more for a brand.
Okay.
We were quite surprised. In fact, we thought we introduced a second brand, a cheaper brand, for the rural areas. No, they want Prestige. and they're prepared to pay the price.
Talking about the way forward, you've said in previous interviews that you're glad that your children perhaps are not interested in the business and are doing other things. Why perhaps is that maybe necessary? You've spoken about the fact that you're very happy to have a professional manager on board, and a lot of entrepreneurs that we speak with are still family run and family owned businesses. That clearly has though worked very well for you in terms of having a professional manager. What would you like to tell our viewers?
There's an old saying that the first generation starts a business, the second generation builds the business, the third generation destroys the business.
Okay. And you're the third generation of the business, but you've taken it forward, yes.
But then can I take a chance with the fourth generation? I don't know. Okay. No, I think the reason why we decided that the family will not run the business is because I am very passionate about this business. I cook. I've been cooking since I was 8 years old. Okay. So I enjoy cooking, so I enjoy doing things in the kitchen, innovating for the kitchen and so on. Also, I'm an engineer, so that helps me innovate. My children are not as passionate about this business as I am. And they've made that very clear, that they're not as passionate. Now, I need somebody who's passionate about this business. So I've surrounded myself with people who are passionate about this business, and they're professionals, and I'm sure that they'll run the business very well.
Okay. Lovely talking to you here on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
I'm going to take a very quick break. On that note, management of Indifi is joining us on the other side in the second The Influencer Conversation. Do stay tuned. Back in just a moment. Welcome back. You're with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow, and tonight our second The Influencer Conversation is with Indifi. Aiming to bridge the massive gap when it comes to the MSME funding is Gurgaon-based Indifi. Alok Mittal, he needs no introduction, joining us here on the show to talk about what he's doing in the space, to talk about his journey as an entrepreneur. Alok, so good having you joining us here tonight. You've returned to the fold of being an entrepreneur after almost a decade. What's that been like for you?
So I obviously started off as an entrepreneur. 1999 is when I did my first startup, Jobs Ahead. And when we sold that company in 2005, the intent was very much to go out and do another startup. So in some sense, investment role was an accident that happened to me. It was fun while it lasted. But after having done it for about 10 years, I was eager to come back to operating a business hands-on and solving problems that customers face, rather than just backing entrepreneurs who were doing that. So that was the decision I took in 2014, 2015. To come back to entrepreneurship and start a company which could have a high impact over time.
Where did the inspiration for Indifi Technologies really come about? Alok, what's that journey been for you like?
So when we started to look at the small business lending industry, we realized that a large part of it is underserved. Everyone knows it's underserved, but most people did not have a view on why it was underserved. So that was really the question that motivated us to look at this problem in more detail and figure out, if you will, the root cause for this being underserved. And that is where the leap of faith came from. We essentially realized that this market has been served in a one-size-fits-all manner, whereas there is an opportunity to subsegment this market along industry verticals and use that as the lever to serve many of the customers who otherwise would not get unsecured credit. So that is the underlying thesis that we started to operate on, and then leverage technology and data for execution.
We speak very often, of course, to entrepreneurs here on the show, trying to understand where the biggest challenges are. So my question to you really is that you have a lot of government schemes, whether it is, the collateral-free CGT, MSE, you have the Mudra scheme. SIDBI, of course, is completely involved when it comes to lending to small businesses. And yet there is this massive billion-dollar shortfall when it comes to credit supply to MSMEs. My question is, where is really, where is that gap really happening?
So the gap in SME funding comes from this notion of risk assessment, which is uniform across the kind of businesses. Now, if you look at a manufacturing business vis-a-vis a restaurant or a hotel, they have very different underlying risk criteria, and the templates for how to assess those risk criteria have not been developed so far. Now, that exists for a good reason. as you looked at building lending companies, the degree of operational complexity that you want to put in the company is limited, so that literally hundreds of people can sell this product and underwriters can underwrite to this product. But we think that technology provides us with a lever to subsegment this market and essentially be able to assess risk in a manufacturing company like it is a manufacturing company, and for a restaurant, taking into account what the risks in that business are. What has happened with many of the government schemes is they have certainly pushed the envelope on making small business credit available, but either those programs are not profitable by themselves, which means that they can't really scale at a large rate, or they are tied to the asset and inventory that businesses hold. And what that means is that they are relevant to certain kind of businesses, for example, manufacturing businesses, but those same programs might not be relevant for a services business. So there are large parts of small business landscape that still remain underserved in spite of all these programs being out there.
Speaking of funding, you've raised funding as well, $10 million, I understand, led by the likes of Omidyar amongst others. Where are you using that, and if you can give us some sense on that?
So we have really two requirements for funds in our business, and we raise funds differentially for those two requirements. The first is to build the platform and invest in understanding each of these verticals that I talked about, so that we can build the right products and the right assessment criteria, data models, all of that. And that is a classic platform investment, and largely we have used our equity capital to be able to invest in those areas. Because we take a differential view to many of these industries than what conventional banks and NBFCs do, we also have a requirement to be able to experiment with our own capital, indeed lend to these businesses and see if the money can come back before we take these products out to banks and NBFCs for them to lend. So we do have a RBI regulated NBFC where all of these initial assets lie, and we fund that NBFC through a mix of equity and debt capital.
We were talking previously about the multiple schemes that exist for small businesses, but one subsection really of entrepreneurs that we must address on today's interview is women entrepreneurs. Several women entrepreneurs speaking with us here on the show, speaking with us at the road shows that we go to, tell us that they're raising interest at rates which are much higher than what their male counterparts are able to raise. Almost 14-15%. Why is that really happening? How do you really see the situation panning out?
One of the things that has happened in the lending industry is a lot of biases have formed because there was lack of data, right? And these biases then tend to operate at an overall level. So we see large swaths of population being excluded from financing. You mentioned that women entrepreneurs find it hard to raise capital. Similarly, we have seen certain communities in certain geographical areas just being blackout areas. And we think a lot of this is because data wasn't available, and hence underwriters had to come up with simplistic views on who they will lend to and who they won't. As more data is coming into the lending industry, this is changing because underwriters are now looking to discriminate risk within that population. They are beginning to say, what kind of women entrepreneurs are creditworthy and who's not. And the same question is being asked for male entrepreneurs. So for example, we run our entire business through data-based underwriting. We don't have customer visits as part of our underwriting process. In our case, 30% of the money that we disperse goes out to women entrepreneurs. So it is a significant lift from what the market is able to do. And we hope that the market will follow this and all of us will get to a better level of inclusion. But the fundamental reason why it's appearing on the horizon is because database underwriting is catching up, whether that is at Indifi or other lending institutions.
My last question to you, Alok. A report suggesting the fintech sector was at the top of the startup funding charts, mopping up nearly $2.3 billion. That's across 145 deals. My question is, if you can give us some insights into what you think is really attracting VCs to the kind of deals that we've been seeing.
So overall, from a venture capital and equity fundraising standpoint, the offline to online theme still remains very, very strong, right? India is still a country where most of the commerce happens offline, and there are several companies that continue to raise capital to be able to bring an online connect to those businesses, and you would have seen some of the recent investments in that area. I do think that consumer brands are making a comeback. People are essentially now looking at platforms like Amazon and Flipkart at one end to platforms like Swiggy and Zomato to be able to create consumer brands, whether that is in apparels, whether that is in kids goods, or it is in food services industry. So I think more and more investment will get channelized towards creating consumer brands on top of the platforms that have emerged over the last 4 or 5 years.
Alok Mittal, always a pleasure having you here on the show.
Thank you.
All right, that's our show tonight. If you have any feedback for us, do get in touch. Our contact details on your screens in just a moment. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.